The thunderstorm rolls over Brooklyn like a freight train, low and angry, rattling the rusted sign of Cole Hardware and Auto Repair. Inside the cramped shop, fluorescent lights flicker over rows of hanging tools, shelves of spare parts, and a half-disemboweled vintage car perched on a lift. Zoe Cole plants her boots wide on the oil-stained concrete and points a grease-smudged finger straight at the man in the tailored suit. Her dark braid is shoved under a backwards cap, cheeks streaked with sweat and dust. Her voice is loud enough to scare the wren out of the rafters. "You signed the estimate," Zoe snaps. "That big job is mine. You try to walk now, and I will take your fancy little sports car apart bolt by bolt and sell it as scrap. Do you understand me?" The client, a 30-something man with a slick haircut and a watch that costs more than Zoe's truck, flinches back a step. Rain drums against the open garage door behind him. "Zoe, be reasonable," he protests. Walker Group is sending their people. They expect professional service, not a hot-headed girl yelling at them. Zoe's jaw tightens. She smells gasoline, hot metal, and the faint sour note of his cologne. She hates that scent already. "I rebuilt your transmission in one day," she fires back. "I stayed here until 3 in the morning so you could show off at your stupid charity gala. Now you want to cut me out when there is real money on the table? Not happening." From the next bay, Tony leans on a massive wrench and watches with round eyes. He is tall, barrel-chested, and covered in tattoos of flames and tools. His beard is full of metal filings. Boss," Tony mutters, jerking his chin toward the street. "I think the fancy people just arrived." A flash of lightning turns the whole shop white. Thunder booms a heartbeat later, so loud that dust shakes loose from the ceiling. Zoe squints toward the doorway. Outside, a sleek black town car pulls up to the curb. The driver hops out, umbrella ready. The rear door opens, and the storm suddenly has competition. A woman steps out in a white couture dress that probably costs more than Zoe's entire building. The dress drapes over her like water, shimmering even under gray clouds. Her hair is styled in soft waves, pinned back with pearls. She clutches a silver clutch bag in one hand and a paper folder in the other. 2 bodyguards in dark suits fan out around her. Another assistant rushes up with a second umbrella. The woman stares at the chipped paint and crooked Cole Hardware sign with mild horror. "This is it?" she asks, voice tight. "Grandmother wants to acquire this." The driver clears his throat carefully. "Yes, Miss Walker. The board says the location is valuable, and the shop has strong community ties." Zoe's client straightens, smoothing his tie. "That is Aria Walker." He hisses to Zoe. "Heiress to the Walker Group. She could buy 10 blocks of this neighborhood if she wants. If she does not like you, this deal is dead." Zoe rolls her eyes. "I do not need some heiress to approve my work," she mutters. "Steel is steel." Aria Walker steps into the doorway, heels clicking on the metal threshold. The smell of engine oil hits her like a slap. She wrinkles her perfect nose and glances down at the floor before taking another careful step. The world seems to pause. Zoe, still in her grease-stained coveralls, stands with hands on hips. Aria, in white silk and diamonds, stands framed by the storm. Their eyes lock. Zoe thinks, great, a porcelain doll with a boardroom. Aria thinks she is allowed. Thunder grumbles again, closer now. Wind whips through the open bay, sending old receipts fluttering. "Miss Walker." The client gushes, hurrying to Aria's side. "So glad you made it. This is the owner I told you about, Zoe Cole." He gestures between them, as if presenting 2 incompatible brands of cereal. Zoe wipes her hand on a rag and offers it anyway. "Zoe," she says. "The person who actually knows how to fix things around here." Aria looks at the hand. There is grease on Zoe's knuckles, and a cut healing over one finger. Aria hesitates before taking it, fingers light. "Aria Walker," she replies. "I manage acquisitions and special projects for my family's company." Zoe notices the way Aria's shoulders tighten when she says, "family," and the way one of the bodyguards watches her, not like a colleague, but like a babysitter. "I hope you do not take offense, Miss Walker," the client says, quickly filling the silence. "But you know how it is. This place could be so much more elegant." Zoe turns her glare on him. "This place keeps half this block moving," she snaps. "You think the guys who bring their delivery vans and busted trucks here care about elegance?" Aria opens her folder, glancing through neat typed pages. Walker Group believes this block could be redeveloped. She explains. "We acquire the property, modernize the facilities, bring in a new brand image. It could be beneficial for everyone." Zoe laughs, a short, sharp sound. "Beneficial for everyone who already has money." she says. You slap chrome on it and triple the rent, and every shop on this street will be gone in a year. Arya's brows knit. I am not the villain here, she says, stung. I am just doing my job. Your job is to smile and sign papers. Zoe shoots back. Mine is to keep people's cars from exploding. The air feels heavy, charged. Tony shifts from foot to foot, eyeing the dark clouds building above the corrugated metal roof. Boss, he says again. Storm is getting weird. Zoe ignores him. You want to buy this place? She asks Arya. Then you talk to me, not Mr. Fancy Cufflinks here. And you look at the actual numbers, not whatever some consultant typed up to make you feel important. Arya's cheeks flush. She is used to people calling her, ma'am, or Miss Walker, not being yelled at in a grease pit. You have no idea what I do or do not understand. She replies. I have a degree in finance, and I know plenty about numbers. Great, Zoe says. Then you can count the spark plugs. She takes a step closer, jabbing a finger at the folder in Arya's hand. At that exact moment, thunder rips the sky apart. Lightning crashes into the metal sign above the garage with a blinding flash, jumping from the rusted letters down into the frame of the building. The fluorescents pop and die. Every tool hanging on the wall sings with sudden static. Zoe feels pain and heat punch through her skull. Her vision jumps sideways. Her world reduces to white. Arya feels the same jolt roar up through the steel threshold, racing through her heels, up her spine, into her heart. Her breath freezes. For an instant, their palms touch again as they both flinch. Electricity arcs between them like a living thing. The next sound is screaming. Tony yells something. The bodyguards shout. Get down. Papers fly into the air. The metal roof hums again, like it is holding back another bolt. Zoe feels herself falling, but the floor does not meet her. The world twists. The smell of gasoline is gone, replaced by perfume and cold air conditioning. Her clothes feel wrong, too light. Something digs into her ribs. Her eyes snap open. She is lying on a couch that is impossibly soft, her head pillowed against a silk cushion. A chandelier sparkles above her, throwing rainbows over a coffered ceiling. A painting of some ship at sea glowers down from the wall. Zoe bolts upright. Ow, she groans, clutching her head. Her hand registers first. The fingers are slim, nails perfectly manicured in a pale pink. No grease, no calluses. A diamond bracelet winks at her wrist like an accusation. What the hell? She whispers. Her voice is wrong. It is softer, higher, wrapped in a polished mid-Atlantic accent. Zoe swings her legs off the couch and nearly crashes to the floor. The heels on her feet are so high they feel like stilts. The white dress clings to a body that is all delicate curves and fragile lines. Where is my coverall? She blurts. Where is my wrench? The door to the sleek living room bursts open. A man in a suit rushes in, followed by an older woman with perfect posture and a cane. Arya, thank God. The older woman exclaims. You gave us a heart attack. Zoe looks from one face to the other. Who is Arya? She asks. The older woman goes still. Her eyes narrow. You are. She says slowly. You are Arya Walker. Zoe's heart lurches against someone else's ribs. Down in Brooklyn, on the concrete floor of Cole Hardware, another pair of eyes flies open. Arya gasps, sitting up in a panic. The first thing she sees is metal, everywhere. Racks of tools, engines in pieces, a car on a lift. The second thing she sees is her own hands. Except they are not her hands. They are broader, with tiny scars across the knuckles and a faint tattoo of a wrench on one wrist. What is this? She squeaks and chokes on the sound that comes out. It is husky, low, with a Brooklyn edge. She looks down and sees an unzipped blue coverall over a faded band t-shirt. Her boots are heavy. There is a smear of grease on her thigh. A cockroach scuttles out from under a toolbox. Arya lets out a scream that shakes the walls. Roach. There is a roach. Somebody help. She jumps onto the nearest workbench, sending socket sets clattering to the floor. Tony stares up at her with his mouth hanging open. Zoe? He says, stunned. Since when are you scared of bugs? Zoe wakes up the next morning convinced that it was all a very vivid nightmare. For about 3 seconds. Then she tries to roll out of bed, and almost brains herself on the edge of a glass nightstand that definitely did not exist in her old studio apartment above the shop. The room around her is huge and painfully clean. White walls, soft gray carpets, the faint scent of lavender instead of oil and dust. One entire wall is glass, looking out over Manhattan, the river glittering in the distance under a washed-out early sun. Designer furniture is arranged with magazine precision. On the far armchair sits a garment bag with a gold logo. A little card is tied to the hanger with a silver ribbon. For tonight, my darling. Do not embarrass the family. Zoe squints at the perfect handwriting, reading it 3 times. Yeah. She mutters. No pressure. She drags herself into the bathroom and flips on the lights. The woman in the mirror almost makes her jump again. Arya's face looks back at her. Big dark eyes, flawless skin, hair falling in waves around her shoulders. Zoe lifts one hand, and the reflection follows, touching her cheek. Okay. Zoe tells the mirror. You are Arya Walker. For now. And Arya Walker apparently has a very annoying grandmother. There is a knock at the door. Miss Walker. Comes a voice. It is crisp, professional. Breakfast is ready. Your grandmother and cousin are waiting. Zoe glances around wildly, spots a robe lying at the foot of the bed, and yanks it on. She stubs one toe on a trunk and curses under her breath. The curse sounds wrong in Arya's elegant voice, like graffiti in a museum. She opens the door to find a young woman in a black dress, hair pulled back in a severe bun. The woman takes in Zoe's messy hair and baffled expression in a blink, but her face stays polite. Good morning, she says. I am Nora. Your grandmother asked me to remind you about the charity gala tonight. Right, Zoe says. Her stomach growls. At least hunger feels the same, no matter whose body she is in. Lead the way. The Walker penthouse dining room looks more like a hotel restaurant than a family table. Windows, city, more paintings. At the far end of a long polished table sits Eleanor Walker, matriarch of the Walker Group. She wears a pearl necklace like armor, and holds a porcelain teacup with fingers that look fragile but are not. Beside her, Viola Walker scrolls lazily through her phone. Viola's hair is perfectly curled, her blouse unbuttoned just enough to show off a necklace. She glances up when Zoe enters and gives a bright, cutting smile. Well, well. Viola purrs. Look who finally woke up. Arya, you fainted in an auto repair shop. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Zoe bristles. I was electrocuted. She points out, dropping into a chair halfway down the table. The cushion swallows her, too soft. Pretty sure that beats embarrassing. Eleanor's eyebrow twitches. The doctors say you are fine, she says. No lasting damage. A little shock to the system might do you some good. Zoe stares. Wow, she says. Heartwarming. A servant appears with coffee. Zoe reaches for the mug like a lifeline, and takes a big gulp. It is delicate and carefully brewed. It tastes like regret. She misses the sludge Tony makes in the shop. Eleanor sets her cup down with a quiet click. Tonight's gala is critical, she says. The Smith family will be there. We need their investment for the new development. You will dance with Charles Smith and you will be charming. Viola smirks behind her hand. Try not to run away to the bathroom to cry this time, she says. Last year the gossip column said you looked like a frightened deer. Something hot rises in Zoe's chest. She has never met the original Arya, but she has read enough pieces of her life now to know that this girl has been pushed around for years. She thinks of the neat handwriting in the journal on the bedroom shelf, the pages of polite misery. I do not want to marry a stranger for money. I do not want to be the answer to a business problem. Zoe sets her coffee down too hard, sloshing some over the rim. The servant flinches. Eleanor, Zoe says. Both older women blink, unused to hearing the matriarch's name out loud at the table. What did you call me? Eleanor asks. Zoe meets her gaze straight on. I said, Eleanor. She replies. I am not a chess piece. I am not attending that gala to be dangled in front of some investor like a prize cow. There is a stunned silence. Viola's phone slips from her fingers and thunks softly onto the tablecloth. Arya. Eleanor says, voice low with warning. This is not negotiable. Everything is negotiable. Zoe shoots back. That is, like, the first rule of dealing with mechanics and plumbers. You want something fixed, you sit down and talk like a human being, not like a spreadsheet. Nora, standing by the door, looks like she wants to dissolve into the wallpaper. You will apologize. Eleanor says. Her eyes are steel. You are still recovering from that incident. I will take your little outburst as a sign of stress. Zoe pushes her chair back and stands. You know what? She says. I am stressed. I woke up yesterday in someone else's body. The last thing I need is a lecture about my dance card. She storms out of the dining room barefoot, leaving 3 stunned women behind her. The rug is too thick. The hall is too long. Her robe flaps around her legs. She has no idea where she is going, but anywhere is better than sitting still and letting people plan her life. Down in Brooklyn, Chaos is also on the menu. The guys at Cole Hardware have known Zoe for years. They have seen her climb into engine bays, curse at seized bolts, and carry a transmission housing on her shoulders, like it weighs nothing. They have seen her drop hot metal on her boots and barely flinch. They have not seen her perch on a workbench and scream about cockroaches. Tony stands below the bench, hands raised like he is calming a wild horse. Zoe, hey. He says. It is just a bug. You used to squish them with your hand for fun. Arya presses back against the wall, heart pounding. The cockroach has vanished, but she can still feel it in her imagination, clawed legs skittering. If you do not get rid of it, she says through clenched teeth, I am setting this whole place on fire. The words come out in Zoe's voice. It feels like wearing someone else's jacket, heavy and strange. A teenager in a grease-stained hoodie snorts. Damn, boss. He says. You hit your head real hard yesterday. Shut up, Marco. Tony tells him. He turns back up to Arya. You want to come down now? I want bleach. Arya says. And a mop. And a vacuum. And a professional pest control plan. Tony blinks. A what? Arya takes a breath, tries to hold on to something familiar. Numbers. Systems. She has spent her whole life turning chaos into charts. Maybe that can work here too. Listen. She says, climbing down cautiously. Her boots hit the concrete with a heavy thud. If you want to get better clients, you cannot have roaches. Tony shrugs. Clients are scared of their own brakes failing, not bugs. He says. Arya shakes her head. High-end clients will not bring their cars to a place that smells like old socks. She counters. And you cannot keep tools like this. She gestures around. Wrenches are piled in buckets, sockets scattered across benches, and there is a coffee mug holding a suspiciously black liquid near an open engine. This is a safety hazard, she says. And inefficient. Marco folds his arms. It has always been like this. He says. Zoe says if you know where everything is in the mess, it is fine. Arya locks onto that thread. Do you? She asks. Do you know where everything is? Marco opens his mouth, closes it, looks at a pile of sockets, looks back at her, and shrugs. Mostly. Mostly is not good enough for hydraulics. Arya says. Or customers. She snatches a rag, wipes off a cleared section of workbench, and finds a marker. With quick, precise strokes, she starts drawing rectangles on the bench surface and writing labels inside them. Wrenches, sockets, ratchets, electrical. You. She says, pointing at Marco. Start sorting, smallest to largest. If you mix them up, I will personally make you measure every bolt in this shop with a ruler. Marco laughs uncertainly, but something about her glare makes him move. Tony scratches his beard. Since when do you care about labels? He asks. You used to say tape was for cowards. Arya hesitates. People can change, she says. And so can shops. She spends the next hour creating what she mentally calls the basic cleanliness protocol. Trash cans go to every bay. A schedule goes on the wall. The coffee mug of doom is emptied and scrubbed. She opens the back door and lets fresh air sweep through the space. Underneath the grime, the shop is actually a nice. There is light, room to move. Old posters of bands and racing events add color. By noon, Tony is staring around with an expression that is half offended, half impressed. I am not gonna lie, he admits. This does look less like a dragon's lair. Marco wipes sweat from his forehead. Do we get paid extra for cleaning? He asks. No, Arya says. But you get fewer tetanus shots. The bell on the front door jingles. A woman in a leather jacket steps in, leading a little boy by the hand. Zoe, she calls. My truck is making that noise again. Arya turns automatically. Hi, she says, wiping her hands on the coverall. Describe the noise. The woman blinks. You never make me describe it, she says. You always say, bring it in, I will listen. Arya nearly says I am not Zoe, but the words lodge in her throat. She cannot explain without sounding insane. New policy, she says instead. Describe it first, then bring it in. We are streamlining. She listens to the woman's imitation of a grinding whine and manages to connect it to a list of common problems Zoe's memories quietly offer from somewhere deep behind her eyes. It feels like pulling files from someone else's drawer, but they are there. Within an hour, the truck is up on the lift, the faulty part identified. When she finishes tightening the last bolt, Arya steps back and watches the engine run smooth and steady. Warmth blooms in her chest. No board meeting has ever felt like this. The woman hugs her. You are a lifesaver, she says. Again. As the truck pulls away, Tony leans against the doorway, watching Arya with narrowed eyes. Okay, he says slowly. I am starting to think that lightning did something to your head. Arya wipes a streak of grease from her cheek. You have no idea, she says. Zoe has never spent so much time being touched by strangers in her entire life. By 6 o'clock that evening, the penthouse has turned into a war room for beauty. Stylists swarm around her, pinning, spraying, and contouring. Someone paints her nails. Someone else attacks her hair with heated tools. Hold still. The main stylist murmurs. If you move, the eyeliner will stab your soul. I weld for a living, Zoe mutters. I am not afraid of eyeliner. She is, however, a little afraid of the red dress hanging on the door. It is a Walker classic, according to Nora. Floor length, fitted like sin, with a low back and a slit-up one leg. It says power and elegance. Nora says as she zips Zoe into it. Grandma wants you to make an impression. It says I cannot bend over. Zoe replies. How am I supposed to run if there is a fire? You do not run. Nora says. You pose. And you smile. Zoe makes a face in the mirror. The dress does look incredible on Arya's body. She hates that she notices. By the time the driver drops them off at the hotel ballroom, Zoe's patience has worn thin. Eleanor steps out of the car first, the picture of control. Viola floats behind her in shimmering silver, walking like she owns the carpet. Zoe takes a deep breath and steps out onto the pavement. Flashbulbs pop, reporters murmur. The Walker women glide toward the entrance, guards flanking them. A banner above the doors reads Smith Foundation Annual Gala. Inside, the ballroom is all chandeliers and polished marble, full of people who smell like money and expensive perfume. Waiters weave through the crowd with trays of champagne. A jazz trio plays in the corner. Zoe immediately hates it. She hears the comments as they pass. Is that the shy Walker girl? She looks different tonight. Maybe the engagement rumors are true. Eleanor leans close. Remember, she whispers, smile. Say as little as possible. Let me talk. Zoe smiles tightly. No promises, she says. Charles Smith finds them faster than she expects. He is as slick as his photos, blonde hair combed back, teeth too white. He holds a champagne flute like he was born with it. Mrs. Walker, he says smoothly, kissing Eleanor's hand. Always a pleasure. Viola, you look stunning. Viola giggles, preening. And Arya, he adds, turning to Zoe. His gaze drifts over the dress. You look surprising. Zoe's fingers itch for a wrench. Hi, she says. Arya Walker, human being, not a company asset. Nice to meet you. His smile falters for a second before he recovers. Indeed, he says. Shall we dance later? I hear the reporters are very interested in seeing us together. Eleanor gives Zoe a warning nudge. Viola watches with hungry eyes. Zoe takes a sip of champagne to buy herself a moment. It tastes like fizzy disappointment. Sure, she says easily. After we talk business. Charles blinks. Business. Zoe smiles sweetly. You were not expecting a free advertisement, were you? She asks. If you want people to whisper about a merger, at least pretend we are discussing something other than my dress. Eleanor's fingers tighten around her own glass, but she does not interrupt. A few nearby guests have turned to listen. Charles clears his throat. Of course, he says. I am very interested in the redevelopment of that little block in Brooklyn. The auto shop. Funny, Zoe says. You have never set foot in the shop. He laughs lightly. I have people who handle inspections. He says. Delegation is important. Zoe tilts her head. Right, she says. People like the consultant who wrote this. She pulls a folded packet of papers from her clutch. Nora helped her print it. The fonts clash with the elegant setting, but Zoe likes that. This is your proposed cost analysis for the redevelopment, she says, flicking it open. And it is wrong. A ripple of whispering moves through the small crowd. Charles's face goes pale. I beg your pardon, he says. You should, Zoe replies. Here, for example. She taps a paragraph. You calculated material costs, based on premium decorative cladding, but your design never uses it. You have also underestimated labor by about 30%. Either your people cannot do math, or you are planning to cut corners later and hope no one notices. Eleanor's lips curl at the edge. This is new. This is not the mouse she raised. Charles sputters. That is an internal draft. He says. You should not even have. Oh, maybe it got left in the boardroom after your last meeting, Zoe says. Maybe someone who actually cares about honest numbers picked it up. Whoever she is, She did a better job in one night than your team did in weeks. A flash of something flickers in Eleanor's eyes. Pride, maybe. It scares her enough that she looks away. Viola jumps in, voice sharp. Arya, you are making a scene. She hisses. Apologize. Zoe turns to her cousin, smiling without warmth. Sorry, she says. You are right. I should correct myself. She looks back at Charles. They can do math, she says. They just assumed we were stupid. The guests around them laugh, some nervously, some delighted. One older man claps his hands once, beaming. Now that is a walker, he says. Charles glares at him. You will regret this. Charles murmurs to Zoe under his breath. No one will invest if they think you are unstable. Zoe leans in, voice low. I rebuilt a brake system from scrap parts last week, she says. I know unstable. You are not it. You are just overpriced. She straightens and raises her glass. To honest numbers, she says, loud enough for others to hear. And to not selling out an entire neighborhood just because your balance sheet thinks it is cute. Some people laugh, others look away. Charles stalks off, jaw tight. Eleanor exhales slowly. What has gotten into you? She asks. Zoe meets her gaze. Lightning, she says. And the fact that people like him think they can walk into places like that shop and just erase them. Viola steps closer, eyes sharp. You are going to ruin everything, she hisses. Do you know how long I have worked to convince grandmother you can handle responsibility? If you keep this up, she will skip you and go straight to me. Zoe studies her. That is what you want, right? She asks. The company, the title, the power. Viola's lashes flutter. What else is there? She says. Zoe remembers the journal pages. The lines about wanting to do something real. Plenty, Zoe says. You would hate getting your nails dirty. She leaves Viola fuming and makes her way to a window. Outside, lightning flickers in the distance, painting the clouds in pale flashes. She wonders what Arya is doing right now. Whether she is okay. Whether roaches are winning. Down in Brooklyn, the evening is anything but glamorous. The shop smells like rain and metal. Arya stands in front of the whiteboard she dragged in from the storage room. Her handwriting is still neat, even with Zoe's rough fingers. On the board, she has written weekly revenue targets in huge letters. Tony sits on a crate, arms folded. I feel like I am back in school. He grumbles. You skipped school, Marco says from another crate. Shut up, child. Tony replies. Arya taps the marker against the board. Listen, she says. If you want to raise wages, replace that old lift before it collapses, and stop drinking coffee that tastes like burned tires. You need better cash flow. That means attracting clients who pay on time and do not haggle over every cent. Tony lifts a hand. What is wrong with my coffee? He asks. Everything, Arya says automatically. Focus. She has pulled the shop's old receipts from a shoebox under the counter. They were crumpled and stained. Now they are arranged in stacks by month. The numbers dance comfortably in her head. You are undercharging for diagnostics, she explains. And you are giving away a lot of free labor when people show up without appointments. If we put in a proper schedule and a small booking deposit, you can plan better and waste less time. Tony frowns. What if someone's car breaks down on the bridge? He asks. We cannot tell them to make an appointment. Arya smiles. Emergency slots, she says. We hold one each day. First come, first served. People will still feel taken care of, but we will not be drowning in chaos. The guys exchange glances. You sound like a manager, Marco says. Zoe always says managers suck. Arya's smile falters. Then pretend I am not a manager, she says quietly. Pretend I am someone who does not want you to break your back and still be broke at the end of the month. Tony studies her for a long moment. You are different, he says. Since that storm, you still swear like Zoe, but now you talk like you swallowed a spreadsheet. Arya laughs, startled, and covers it with a cough. Maybe lightning knocked some sense into me, she says. Would that be so bad? Tony shakes his head slowly. For what it is worth, he says. The place does feel better, less like a junkyard, more like a shop people would not be afraid to bring a new car to. The bell chimes. A man in a blazer and thin glasses steps in, shaking raindrops from his umbrella. Hi, he says. I am from the Midtown Theater. We called about the stage lift. It is stuck halfway up and our show opens in 2 days. Arya straightens. Yes, she says. I looked at your photos and schematics. I think I know what is wrong. But I will need to see it in person. The man gives the shop a once-over. He notices the labeled tool racks, the swept floor, the fresh coffee pot. I have to admit, he says, I was not sure about coming to Brooklyn, but this looks a professional. Tony nudges Arya behind his back. That is your cue. He whispers, go close the deal, boss. Boss. The word makes something flutter in Arya's chest. She steps forward and flashes the man a small, confident smile. Let us take a look, she says. If I cannot fix it, you do not pay. An hour later, she is standing under the stage of a small theater, the smell of dust and old curtains around her. The mechanical lift groans as it tries to move. She listens, feels the vibration through the metal, and then crawls under the platform with a flashlight and a set of wrenches. Her hair is tied back with a bandana Marco loaned her. Her borrowed body moves with more ease now, as if Zoe's muscles remember things her mind is still learning. When she tightens the final bolt and the platform rises smoothly, the theater director claps his hands like a kid. This is a miracle, he says. We almost had to cancel the show. It is not a miracle, Arya says, climbing out. Her back is sore, but the good kind of sore. It is basic maintenance that your former contractor did not bother to do. The director winces. That contractor was recommended by the Smiths, he says. I guess I should have known. Arya wipes grease from her palms and smiles. Well, she says. Now you have someone better. When she gets back to the shop, Tony counts the thick envelope of cash with wide eyes. This is triple what we usually get, he says. You sure you did not rob them? They are the ones who have been robbed for years, Arya says. We just raised the price to something fair, for them and for us. Tony nods slowly, impressed. Zoe, he says. I do not know what you did with the old you, but I like this version. Arya laughs, a little sad, a little proud. Me too, she says. 2 nights after the gala, the penthouse is quiet. Eleanor has retreated to her study. Viola is out at some rooftop bar, taking photos for social media. The city hums beyond the glass, but up here, everything feels still. Zoe curls up in a corner of Arya's bedroom, with a thick hardcover book open on her lap. She has tried to distract herself with fiction, but the words refuse to stick. Her mind keeps returning to the look on Eleanor's face when she humiliated Charles Smith. Not anger, not exactly. Something like a hope, turned sideways. The thought makes her restless. She sets the book aside and wanders to the bookshelf. Arya's collection is neat, arranged by size and color. Business texts, a few novels, some photography coffee table books. On the top shelf, half hidden by a stack of design magazines, sits a plain notebook with a blue cover. No title, no label. It looks like the kind of thing people use for grocery lists, which is exactly why it catches Zoe's eye. She reaches up and tugs it free. The first page is blank. The second is not. I am writing this because I feel like I am disappearing. Zoe sits down on the floor, back against the side of the bed, and turns the page. They say I am lucky. They say people would kill to be me. I have never felt so trapped. She reads slowly, each word tightening something in her chest. Arya writes about endless etiquette lessons, about being dressed like a doll for events she does not care about, about being told that her value is in who she marries, not what she does, about panic attacks in hotel bathrooms, hiding between sink and wall so no one sees her cry. I am good with numbers, Arya writes on another page. Spreadsheets make sense. People do not. I like looking at how money moves, at what it could do if it was not always chasing more money. But every time I bring up an idea that does not end with a merger or a luxury tower, they pat my hand and tell me I am sweet. Zoe's throat feels tight. Yeah, she murmurs. Sweet, that is code for harmless. The last few pages are different. The handwriting gets sharper. Today I went to see the block in Brooklyn, Cole Hardware. It is messy, loud. The owner yelled at me. And yet when I watched her talk to her customers, I saw something I have never seen in a boardroom. People trusted her. I do not want to erase that. Zoe reads the next line 3 times. Maybe I could convince grandmother to partner with them instead of pushing them out. Create something that keeps the community while upgrading the infrastructure. Is that naive? She thinks of the report she waved in Charles Smith's face. She wonders if Arya stayed up that night running numbers with shaking hands, daring to imagine a different kind of deal. Zoe closes the notebook gently. Her eyes burn. You are not naive, she tells the empty room. You are just surrounded by cowards. Her phone buzzes on the nightstand. It is Arya. The name on the screen still says Zoe Cole, in block letters, but the text is painfully formal. I think I fixed a stage lift, Arya's message reads, and negotiated a long-term contract. I may have thrown up in the bathroom before the meeting. But it worked. Zoe grins despite the tightness in her chest. You did more than fix a lift, she taps back. You just proved you can handle difficult clients and safety-critical systems. That is more than half the suits at your family company can say. There is a pause. Then another message comes through. I almost ran when they started yelling, Arya writes. I kept hearing grandmother in my head, saying do not embarrass us. But then I heard you instead, yelling at that guy in the shop. Zoe laughs. What, she writes. Like. Pay your invoice or I will crush you with a transmission. Yes, Arya replies. That exact tone. Zoe hesitates, thumb hovering over the glass. I found your journal, she writes finally. Sorry, I was snooping. You can yell at me later. On the other end of the city, in a small apartment above the shop, Arya sits cross-legged on Zoe's bed. Zoe's bedspread is a faded print of flames and guitars. There are posters of bands on the walls, a stack of car magazines on the nightstand, and a dent in the drywall where someone clearly punched it years ago. On the dresser sits a cheap wooden frame. Inside it, a photo of a man with the same dark eyes as Zoe, grinning under a truck on a sunny day. A younger Zoe leans next to him, holding up a wrench like a trophy. On the back, in smudged marker, is written for Dad. When we open our own shop. Arya touched the frame earlier, fingers tracing the worn edges, and felt her throat close. Her father is alive but mostly absent, always at meetings or on flights. She has never seen him covered in grease. Now she stares at her phone. You read my journal? She types. Yes, Zoe answers. You are allowed to be mad. Arya chews her bottom lip. I am not mad, she writes. Embarrassed, maybe. But you already heard me scream about a cockroach, so there is not much dignity left to protect. The 3 dots appear almost instantly. Hey, Zoe sends. That roach was huge. I would have screamed too. Arya snorts, the sound loud in the quiet room. I found the photo with your dad, she writes. And your note. There is a pause. For a moment she worries she crossed a line, that Zoe will lash out. But the reply, when it comes, is softer than she expects. He taught me everything I know, Zoe writes. About cars. About how people will always try to underpay you. About how a promise is only worth as much as the person making it. Arya traces the edge of the frame again. Did he see you open the shop? She asks. He died before we could, Zoe writes. Heart attack. I used the little insurance money to rent this place and start the business. He would probably yell at me for the tools on the floor though. Arya swallows. He would be proud, she replies. So proud. The dots appear, disappear, appear again. Thanks, Zoe writes. For a while, they just sit there, phones in hand, connected by flickering signals and the faint hum of the city. Eventually, Zoe sends another message. I did some research, she writes, about lightning. Arya sits up straighter. Tell me you did not Google how to reverse cursed thunderbolt. She replies. Close, Zoe answers. I found a few weird articles about rare ball lightning incidents. One in South America, one in Eastern Europe. People claimed that after a strike, they woke up in someone else's body. Everyone assumed it was a delusion, but they described the same tingling, the same headache. And in both stories, the switch ended when they were struck again under similar conditions. Arya stares. So we just need to get struck by lightning twice, she writes. Easy. No problem. We do not have to die, Zoe adds quickly. The cases said minor strikes, not direct hits. Enough to trigger whatever weird thing happened in our brains, not enough to fry us. Arya rubs her forehead. I cannot believe I am considering this. She mutters. Her phone buzzes again. I know it is insane, Zoe writes. But do you want to spend the rest of your life fixing transmissions with my hands while I go to galas in your body? Arya imagines it. The roar of engines instead of violins. The smell of oil instead of perfume. At first, it seemed like a nightmare. Now as she is not sure. I want my own life back, she answers. But I do not want your dream to die either. Then we make sure neither does, Zoe replies. We go back to the shop. Same place, same roof, same kind of storm. And we trust the universe to do its weird electrical magic. Arya exhales slowly. Weather forecast says there is a major storm front moving in later this week, she writes. Heavy thunder, high risk of lightning. Of course you checked the forecast, Zoe replies. You probably put it in a spreadsheet. Arya smiles despite herself. Maybe, she writes. They fall into planning, texting back and forth. How to get Zoe out of dinners without raising suspicion. How to close the shop early without losing clients. how to get to the roof without alarming the landlord. As they talk, something shifts between them. The sharp edges of their first encounter soften. The distance between penthouse and workshop shrinks. At one point, Zoe sends a final message before bed. Arya? Yes, Arya replies. When we switch back, Zoe writes. Do not let them shove you into another engagement. Arya stares at the screen. I am not you, she answers. I am not brave like that. You are, Zoe writes. You just have not had enough practice telling people no. Arya's eyes sting. I will try, she writes. Good, Zoe replies. Because if you do not, I will come back and haunt every charity gala you ever attend. Arya laughs out loud, the sound echoing off the posters and bare walls. Deal, she says to the empty room. Outside, clouds gather, shot through with distant flickers of light. Somewhere between them, thunder rolls, waiting. The storm does not creep in quietly. It arrives like it owns the sky. On the afternoon the forecast warns about, the air in Brooklyn turns heavy and warm. The clouds are a thick smear over the city, bruised purple at the edges. Thunder grumbles in the distance like a dog with a low growl. Arya stands in the middle of the shop floor, wiping her hands on a clean rag. The guys have already closed up early, machinery shut down, cars parked and locked. The usual clanging and humming has been replaced by a nervous stillness. You sure about this? Tony asks, leaning against the lift. He has a baseball cap pulled low over his brow, as if that will protect him from lightning. No, Arya admits. But I am going to do it anyway. Tony shakes his head. I liked it better when your crazy ideas were just about reorganizing sockets. He says. Arya smiles sadly. Me too, she says. Promise me something. Anything. He says automatically, then looks alarmed. Okay, not anything, but most things. If this does not work, Arya says, serious now. Do not let anyone buy this place just to tear it down. Fight for it. Find a lawyer. Make a lot of noise. Tony frowns. Since when do you not plan to stick around? He demands. You are the one who has been making us think we could be more than a junkyard operation. Arya's chest tightens. You will be more, she says. With or without me. He shakes his head. With you preferably. He replies. So let us make the lightning thing work. The bell above the door jingles one last time. Zoe steps in, wearing Arya's face and a plain hoodie instead of couture. Her hair is stuffed into an unglamorous ponytail. There is a small backpack slung over one shoulder. She looks exhausted and more alive than she did the night of the gala. Eleanor thinks I am meeting a charity committee, she says. Viola thinks I am sulking. Nora thinks I am at yoga. And what are you actually doing? Tony asks. Zoe grins. I am going to stand on a roof and get lightly electrocuted, she says. Like a responsible adult. Thunder growls closer. A few fat drops of rain spatter on the sidewalk outside. Tony stares between them, then throws his hands up. Fine, he says. I am not your dad and I am not your lawyer. Just do not die. I am bad at funerals. Arya squeezes his arm as she passes. You are a better friend than you realize, she says. He snorts. Tell that to my ex. He replies. They climb the narrow staircase to the roof. The stairs smell like dust and old paint. The door at the top sticks, as always, and Zoe has to throw her shoulder against it to force it open. The roof is a patchwork of tar and gravel, with a view over low Brooklyn buildings and, in the distance, the faint silhouette of Manhattan's towers. The old metal sign that reads Cole Hardware and Auto Repair creaks above the front edge, bolted to a steel frame. The first time lightning hit it, it charred one corner. The black mark is still visible. The wind tugs at their clothes as they step out. The hair on Arya's arms lifts. This feels like a bad idea, she says. It absolutely is. Zoe agrees. But it is our bad idea. They stand under the sign, close enough that their shoulders touch. The metal vibrates with every rumble of thunder. So, Arya says, trying to keep her voice light. If this goes horribly wrong, and we end up still stuck, you should know I used your shower gel this morning. Zoe gasps in mock outrage. You did not. I did. Arya says. It smells like oranges and motor oil. I kind of love it. Zoe snorts. I used your fancy face cream. She confesses. The one in the little glass jar. Why does moisturizer cost $90? Because capitalism is a scam. Arya says. They laugh, and for a second, the fear eases. Lightning flickers closer, brightening the clouds. The wind picks up, whipping Arya's borrowed hair around her face. The metal sign hums again. Zoe clears her throat. If this works, she says. And we switch back, Do you promise something? Arya turns her head. Depends, she says. Is it about cockroaches? Because I am still not touching those. Zoe smiles. Do not let them force you into a merger, she says. Or a marriage. Or anything you do not want. Not without you looking at every line of every contract with the same stubbornness you used on that stage lift. Arya swallows. You make it sound easy, she says. It is not, Zoe says. But it is easier if you know at least one person in the world will back you up even if you walk out of a gala in the middle of a speech. Arya's eyes sting. You would do that? She asks. Are you kidding? Zoe says. I would drive a tow truck through the lobby. Thunder cracks overhead, so sharp it feels like a slap. The smell of ozone sharpens. The air around them fizzes. Okay, Arya says, voice shaking. My turn. She takes a breath. If this works, she says. And you get your body back, promise me you will not carry all of this alone anymore. Take Tony up on his offer to help with bookkeeping. Ask for better terms when suppliers push you around. Let people see how smart you are, not just how strong. Zoe opens her mouth to joke. The look in Arya's eyes stops her. Yeah, she says. Okay, I promise. The next flash of lightning is so bright it erases the world. It slams into the sign with a deafening crack. Electricity races through steel and air, grabbing both women with invisible hands. Every nerve in their bodies lights up at once, pain and heat and sound merging into one overwhelming chord. For a moment, there is nothing but white. Zoe feels herself split in two. There is the part of her anchored in muscle and bone, the way Arya's heart beats fast in her chest. And there is something else, something that feels like it is made of stubbornness and laughter, and the smell of burnt coffee, and her father's hand on her shoulder. That second part jerks free, pulled toward a familiar shape standing right beside her. Arya feels the same thing, in reverse. Her years of bending to expectations, her quiet counting of steps at every gala, her late-night reading of policy reports, all tear loose from the borrowed strength in her arms, and reach for the delicate frame they know as theirs. The world snaps. Rain hits Zoe's face. Hard, cold. She gasps, lungs burning, and opens her eyes. She is lying on her back on the roof, the rough tar digging into her shoulder blades. Her braid is plastered to her neck. Her boots feel heavy, solid. Her chest heaves, and the air tastes like home. She raises her hand. It is hers. Used, scarred, a faint smear of grease under one nail. My hand. She croaks, then coughs. My hand. Someone laughs weakly beside her. My knees. Arya whispers. I can feel my knees. And they are definitely not strong enough to carry an engine block. Zoe rolls onto her side. Arya lies a few feet away, dress soaked, hair a tangled mess. But the way she curls her fingers, the way her eyes dart to the sign, frantic and bright, is pure Arya. Not Zoe wearing her like a costume. The real thing. Zoe crawls over and pulls her into a hug. They cling to each other, shaking with leftover electricity and hysterical relief. We did it, Zoe says into Arya's shoulder. We actually did it. Arya pulls back enough to look at her. You have no idea how happy I am to see your stupid face, she says. Thunder rolls away into the distance. The worst of the storm passes, leaving only steady rain. The roof door slams open. Zoe. Tony shouts, bursting out into the downpour. If you are dead, I am going to be so mad. He stops short when he sees them. They both wave. Hi, Zoe says. Tony stares, eyes flicking from one to the other. He takes in Zoe's familiar stance, Arya's more cautious posture. Okay, he says slowly. So who is who now? Zoe lifts one hand. Zoe, she says. In original edition. Arya lifts hers. Arya, she says. Also in original edition. Tony looks like he is trying to solve a math problem far above his pay grade. Then he shrugs. Good enough for me, he says. Let us go inside before the universe decides to throw a third lightning bolt at us. They clatter down the stairs, dripping all over the concrete. In the shop, Zoe stands in the middle of the floor and spins in a slow circle, taking everything in with new eyes. The benches are clear, tools are labeled. There is a schedule on the wall. The coffee smells almost drinkable. You did all this, she says to Arya. In my body. Arya wipes rain from her face and laughs. I may have overstepped, she says. I can put the chaos back if you want. Zoe shakes her head. Do not you dare, she says. This place looks like an actual business now. My dad would faint. Tony claps her on the shoulder. He would be proud. He says. So am I, boss. Zoe's throat tightens. Thanks, she says. Her phone buzzes in her pocket. She digs it out, thumb slipping on the cracked screen. There is a text from a number Arya labeled grandmother. Where are you? It reads. The Smiths are demanding a meeting. Zoe glances at Arya. You ready for your own storm? She asks. Arya takes a deep breath. Her hands are shaking, but she nods. Can I borrow your hoodie? She asks. I am not going back to the penthouse in a soaked ball gown. Zoe tosses her a dry one from the rack by the door. Go get them, she says. And if Eleanor starts yelling, tell her new business consultant in Brooklyn said hi. Arya pulls the hood up, wipes leftover mascara from under her eyes, and straightens. For the first time in my life, she says. I think I know what I want to say. She steps out into the rain. 1 year later, the sign on the front of the shop looks different. The old Cole Hardware letters are still there, cleaned and repainted. Beside them, in bright blue, are 3 new words. And Walker Mechanical. Underneath, in smaller letters, Community Auto and Equipment. Zoe stands across the street, hands in her jacket pockets, and stares up at it with a grin she cannot quite control. The winter air is cold enough to turn her breath into little clouds. Snow threatens in the gray sky, but for now, it holds back. Looks good, Tony says beside her, chewing on a bagel. Very official. It is weird, right? Zoe says. Seeing my name next to hers. Tony shrugs. You were already a package deal, he says. The sign just caught up. Inside, the shop hums with organized energy. Cars in 3 bays, a small truck in the 4th, a row of power tools on the back wall. The bulletin board near the door holds appointment schedules, a calendar with highlighted maintenance days, and a flyer for a free basic car care workshop that Zoe runs for neighborhood teens once a month. Arya stands at the front counter, laptop open, glasses perched on her nose. Her hair is tied back in a low ponytail, and she wears a navy blazer over a simple t-shirt and jeans. She looks like the collision of 2 worlds, and somehow, it works perfectly. I am telling you, she says into the phone. If you structure the loan this way, the community gets what it needs and you still make a profit. Win-win. Or do you only like deals where the win is one-sided? She pauses, listening, then smiles. Great, she says. Send the revised draft. And do not hide any surprise clauses in the fine print this time. I read everything now. She hangs up and looks up to see Zoe and Tony watching her through the glass. What? She asks. Do I have oil on my face? Only metaphorically, Zoe says, stepping inside. The door chime jingles, a sound that still makes her chest ache with old memories and new hope. Arya rolls her eyes. We got the loan, she says proudly. Low interest, long term, tied to community hiring targets. The bank wanted to put in a clause about selling if we miss a payment, but I made them remove it. Zoe whistles. Look at you, she says. Terrifying bankers before lunch. Arya shrugs, but her cheeks flush with pleasure. It helps that I no longer care if they like me, she says. I care if they respect the math. Tony grabs a clipboard from the counter. Speaking of math, he says. We are on track to hit our revenue target this quarter. Again. We might be able to give everyone a bonus at the end of the year. Zoe clutches her heart. My dad is definitely fainting somewhere, she says. In a good way. The door opens behind them with a gust of cold air. Eleanor Walker steps in, leaning a little more on her cane than she did a year ago. Viola trails behind her, scarf wound tied around her neck, sunglasses perched on her head despite the lack of sun. Arya straightens automatically, then catches herself and relaxes again. The habit is hard to break. Grandmother, she says. Viola, I did not know you were coming today. Eleanor surveys the shop. Her sharp eyes linger on the clean floors, the organized tools, the little potted plant someone placed near the window. It was on my way. She lies. Everyone knows the Walker penthouse is nowhere near this block. Viola sniffs delicately. It smells like metal, she says. And something else. Success, Zoe offers. And decent coffee. Eleanor's mouth twitches. I have an updated proposal from the board, she announces, handing Arya a folder. They want to formalize the partnership between Walker Group and this enterprise. Arya opens the folder, scanning the pages. The numbers make sense. The conditions are fair. There is no merger clause, no mention of ceding control. You left out the part where you force us to move into a glass tower, she says. Eleanor snorts. I suggested it, she says. The board hates it, something about brand image. But after seeing your projected growth, they changed their minds. Money is a wonderful teacher. Arya closes the folder and looks up. I will look at it tonight, she says. I am not signing anything without reading every line. Eleanor inclines her head. I would be disappointed if you did, she replies. Viola fiddles with her scarf, suddenly uncharacteristically quiet. So, Viola says finally, this is really what you want? This noisy little a place. Arya glances at Zoe, at the guys in the back laughing over some joke, at the truck on the lift, at the whiteboard covered in scrawled ideas for a community tool library. Yes, she says. This is really what I want. Viola shifts her weight. And the company? She asks. You really are going to give up the CEO track? Eleanor makes a small sound, but she does not interrupt. Arya takes a breath. I am not giving it up, she says. I am redefining it. I will sit on the board. I will vote. I will use our resources for projects that are not just luxury condos. But I will not be the face of a corporation that crushes people like the ones who keep this place alive. Viola opens her mouth, closes it. Her eyes dart to Eleanor, seeking approval. Eleanor just watches. You always wanted it more, anyway, Arya says softly. The big office. The title. Viola flushes. You think I am just power hungry? She snaps. You think I only care about parties? Arya shakes her head. I think you are smarter than people give you credit for, she says. If you want the top job, you will probably get it. But you do not have to copy what grandmother's generation did. You could build something different too. Viola blinks hard. You sound like those activist kids on the news. She mutters. Thank you, Arya says. Zoe leans over to Tony and whispers. Is this what emotional growth looks like? I feel weird. Tony elbows her. Shut up, he murmurs. This is better than reality TV. Eleanor clears her throat. Arya, she says. A word. They step aside near the window. Outside, snow finally begins to fall, soft flakes landing on the hood of a parked car. When you stormed out of the gala last year, Eleanor says. I thought you had lost your mind. Arya smiles faintly. I thought so too, she says. Eleanor studies her. And then you sent me an 18-page analysis of the Smith proposal, and 3 alternative development plans that somehow made more money while hurting fewer people. She continues. I have never been so annoyed to be proven wrong. Arya's heart beats faster. You read them? She asks. Of course I read them. Eleanor snaps. Do you think I built an empire by ignoring data? Arya bites her lip. So why did you never listen when I brought you ideas before? She asks quietly. Eleanor sighs, the sound carrying years. Because I was afraid. She admits. Afraid you were not strong enough for this world. Afraid that if I let you be anything but perfect, they would eat you alive. Her gaze shifts to Zoe, who has just burst into laughter at something Tony said, throwing her head back with no concern for decorum. And then you showed up one day yelling at a client with my granddaughter's face. Eleanor continues. And for the first time, I thought maybe she will be okay. Arya's throat tightens. I am not her, she says. I am not Zoe. No, Eleanor says. You are you. And that is finally enough. She pats Arya's cheek awkwardly, then turns away. I expect that contract back in 3 days, she says briskly. With your edits. Arya laughs, wiping at her eyes. Yes, grandmother, she says. When the walkers leave, the shop seems to exhale. Zoe hops up to sit on the counter. So, she says. Miss Board Member, what are we doing tonight to celebrate not being electrocuted this year? Arya glances at the clock. Roof, she says. Sunset, beer, caviar. Tony groans. Caviar again. He says. Why can rich people not celebrate with pizza like normal humans? We can have both, Zoe says. This is a 2-income business now. Later, when the sun sinks behind the skyline, and the sky turns soft pink, they gather on the roof. The old sign creaks above them, now with a small lightning bolt sticker tucked into one corner, courtesy of Marco. Zoe sits cross-legged on the tar, a bottle of cheap beer in hand. Arya leans against the low wall, a paper plate of crackers and caviar balanced on her knee. Tony lurks near the door, muttering about heights but refusing to go back down. I still cannot believe we came back up here willingly, Arya says, looking at the darkening clouds. After what happened. Zoe takes a swig of beer. Lightning is not the worst thing that ever happened to me, she says. It gave me a business partner. Arya smiles. It gave me a way out, she says. And a way in somehow. Their shoulders brush. You ever miss it? Zoe asks. Being in my body, I mean. The strength. The tattoos. Arya considers. Sometimes. She admits. When I lug heavy boxes up the stairs. Or when someone at a meeting cuts me off, and I wish I could slam a wrench on the table without startling the intern. Zoe laughs. You do not need my arms for that, she says. You have a terrifying stare all on your own now. Arya nudges her. What about you? She asks. Ever miss being able to walk into a room and make everyone shut up with one raised eyebrow? Zoe stares at the city, thinking. I never had that to begin with, she says. People barely noticed me unless their car was broken. Arya gives her a look. Zoe, she says. You walked into my life and cracked it open like a stuck bolt. You have always had that power. You just used it on engines and neighbors instead of board members. Zoe shrugs, uncomfortable with the compliment, and stuffs a cracker in her mouth. They sit in companionable silence for a while, watching headlights crawl along the bridge in the distance. You know, Arya says quietly. Sometimes I still wake up and think I am in your body. I expect to smell oil and hear the boys arguing about which superhero could fix an engine fastest. Obviously it is the one who can fly, Zoe says. You can pull engines out without a hoist. Arya snorts. That is what Marco said. She replies. Tony insists it is the one with the suit that has torque-boosting gauntlets. They both laugh. The sky darkens from pink to deep blue. No storms tonight, just a few stars pricking through the city glow. So what do you think the lightning was? Arya asks. Freak weather? Fate? Targeted supernatural intervention from an overworked cosmic intern? Zoe tilts her head, considering. Maybe all of the above, she says. Or maybe the universe looked at two girls who were miserable in different ways and thought, let us shake the snow globe. Arya watches her. You ever wish it had never happened? She asks. Zoe is quiet for a long moment. If it had never happened, she says slowly, I would still be sleeping upstairs, working 16 hours a day, refusing to ask for help, and telling myself I was fine, because at least the shop was mine. Arya nods. And I would still be practicing how to smile without showing too much teeth, because that is aggressive, she says. Counting the days until my wedding to someone I barely know. They look at each other. I like this version better, Zoe says. Me too, Arya says. Tony clears his throat loudly. If you two start crying, I am going back inside, he announces. My emotional capacity is full for the day. Zoe flicks a crumb at him. Relax, she says. We are just appreciating our character development. Arya raises her beer. To character development, she says. Zoe clinks her bottle against it. And to weird lightning, she adds. And to the most chaotic friendship in Brooklyn. Arya finishes. They drink, laughter drifting up into the clear night. For below, in the softly lit shop, the phones sit silent for the moment, calendars cleared for the evening. The tools hang in their places, waiting for tomorrow's work. On the wall, pinned under a magnet shaped like a spark plug, is a photo of Zoe and Arya standing in front of their sign, arms around each other, grinning like idiots. Neither of them knows what the next storm will bring. Deals will fall through. Engines will fail. Family arguments will flare. Life, like weather, will always be unpredictable. But they also know this, whatever crashes down from the sky next time, they will not face it alone.
Thanks for watching. Follow for more romance stories.